Ash and Flo. This is Unbillable Hours, a podcast about professional services marketing. Stick around to listen to our insights, tips, and best practices to improve your firm's marketing and even your career.
Hey everybody, welcome back to this latest episode of the Unbillable Hours podcast, which I know is late. We're dropping this on a Tuesday instead of a Friday as per usual. And our excuse for that is none, because it's our podcast, so we can publish stuff whenever. Just kidding. We had a bit of a busy Friday last week, so we didn't get around to drop this second part of our conversation with Mark Wainwright about systematizing sales. Promised you this second part, and we said he'd jump right into the question of CRM, customer relationship management, systems and software, and which ones to use if you're running a consulting business. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Here it is.
So do you guys want to poke and prod a little bit about CRM systems? It's, everybody on the planet, it's one of those things, everybody on the planet has an opinion about CRM systems. And, Flo, you said that you use a system, and I've used a whole bunch of them. And because I know this is the payoff for everybody. They're like, oh my gosh, we waited forever in this podcast. Now they're going to tell us
which one
exactly,
should we buy? They're
going to tell us the best CRM system to go buy. This is going to be great. They've been talking about business processes and all this other stuff. Now we're going to tell them about CRM system. This is great. And we might not.
No, I like, we discussed this before, right? You sent me a list of systems we wanted to talk about. I was like, oh my god, there's like 50 names I don't even know. So maybe instead of discussing individual platforms, could you I really like your framing there of it's a business process first and software second, and then maybe do you have a few pointers for firms as they maybe pick software, or maybe you can share even some insight, like what are the typical systems? Like if I'm a marketer and I hear Ash and Flo tell me all the time I should familiarize myself with the CRM. Well, which one do I learn, right? What's a good thing to do for a career? I often with the big names always being Salesforce, HubSpot. I don't know. I hear mean jokes being made about Microsoft products. What's your take on the landscape? Are there clear winners in the professional services space? Maybe that's my first question.
Right. Good question. You did mention a handful of them, and we've talked about this in the past. And one of the aha moments that you come across when you've dealt with so many CRM systems. I've been using CRM systems of some type for over 15 years or so, dating back to sort of the Microsoft Contact Manager days, which was their early sort of,
invention, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was right. Yeah. It wasn't, it was probably on my Palm Pilot or something like that. So it was,
nice.
This is forever ago stuff to now. I work with various systems across all my clients, and I worked with Salesforce for years, and one of the aha moments, one of the funny things that I always mention and we talk about is that if you think about it, what was the genesis of Salesforce, right? I think the genesis of Salesforce was created to sell Salesforce, right? So right, so that's and if people start to understand that, it's like Salesforce does a really fabulous job of selling a relatively low dollar, high volume SaaS product, right?
Subscriptions, essentially, yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
subscription,
yeah.
right, that's
gotcha.
it. Yeah. And if you look at CRM after CRM, and you're trying to find one that fits your professional services business, you start to understand pretty quickly that, wow, this product that they're trying to sell to me is really designed to sell a low dollar software SaaS product at high volume. And it just doesn't fit professional services, because professional services are, again, low volume, low quantity, high dollar, complex. And the tools are just not built that way. It's like your revenue engine in professional services, your pipeline cranks out a $100,000 or a $500,000 or a $50,000, project, project closed every week, every month, whatever it is, chunk, right? That's it. Low dollar, high quantity, SaaS products are, 1,000 closes a day, or, whatever it is, right? It's just, and they're all $19.95 a month. Boom, 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 boom. It's just going seats, selling seats. So they're radically different, and it is really hard to find a wonderful CRM product that fits your business process and your business needs from a professional services standpoint, because you're not an ideal client. Professional services firms are not ideal clients for CRM systems because they don't have an army of full-time salespeople. They don't have this high volume, low dollar sort of, just just crunching deals through situation. They have a lot of contacts and not a lot of opportunities. Projects come and go. So it is hard.
And I mean,
it's not impossible.
If you're a boutique, sorry for interrupting, what might be the case that there is, because you mentioned the thousands of closes, right? If you're a boutique, might be you don't even have any more at 10, 12 clients at any given time, and you're doing just fine, right? That's why I like your spreadsheet so much, is I might not even need a ginormous database to keep the overview over all my project, because there's not that many, depending on how my business is structured. Right? But
and to get to, because you asked the question is, what are some of the things that are super important in any sort of, even a spreadsheet, you could use a CRM system, a spreadsheet, whatever. One of the most important things to integrate into that is that sales stages things, and also sort of activities associated with different sales stages. Because at any moment, you can have a handful of deals in your sales pipeline, and you have to know at any moment in the day, you have to know, what did I just do, and what do I need to do next, and when? Right. So it's this activity, this tight activity focus that frankly most CRM systems don't do a very good job of. Is, what have I done? What do I need to do next? When do I need to do it? And oh, by the way, since I'm not sitting in my CRM system staring at it all day long, because I'm in Outlook and I'm in this other stuff, because I'm in professional services and I don't deal with CRM systems all day
interesting.
long.
That's true.
I need a little reminder. I need you to tell me this. I need you to remind me on Tuesday, I need to do this thing. And in order to keep the deal moving, I need to send a note, make a call, whatever it is. And most CRM systems don't do a very good job of just saying, hey,
you're right,
call Bill on Tuesday,
because they're built to live in that, right? The professional sales people who do nothing else, they live in those things. They turn on the computer, fire up the Salesforce, that's everything they need, right? Whereas the consultant has to toggle tabs from PowerPoint or whatever. Never thought about that. Yeah, true.
But this is so interesting because of the fact that I'm fully aware how many times people who've run events, or people who've run basically a sales engagement, forget to put things into the entire, into the CRM. And they also have really a lot of places also have data issues on top of that. So ultimately it's really hard for them to track the entire deal. And you're like, well, we won that deal, but we don't really know what we did here to get to that point. Because the people who were at those touch points literally did not track anything they did. And looking at like professional services firms, because there's huge turnover, these people probably wouldn't be there in the company, but they need to like references again.
I like to say the fundamental reasons of having any process is to get better at it over time. Right. That is why we have processes. It's not necessary. It helps to let us know what to do next in the moment. But most importantly, it lets us improve over time. Right. That's what processes are all about. They're fundamentally put in place to run, test, and improve. Right. That's what a process is all about. And if you aren't following the processes that are in place, or at least testing and experimenting and practicing with them, then you're not contributing to that process improvement part. And, when you look at sort of the Department of, and I referenced this, it's so funny this comes up. I referenced this in another podcast that I was on. The Department of Defense created this way decades ago to assess their various processes, and it has to do with maturity models. And it's at one end, it's sort of emerging everything's ad hoc. There aren't really any processes in place. Next step is we have some processes and some people are following them. Next is like we have processes, people are following them, and further steps are we have processes, they are being followed and they're being improved, right? That is a critical step in the maturity of any business processes, that you are improving your processes. So if you're not following them, or at least testing them to see if they work or not, and then seeing how you might change them, you're not improving. And organizations that are mature to the level where they are operating at a process improvement level, like Lean Six Sigma, that kind of stuff, are hitting it out of the park. They're the ones that are making, $500,000 per, of annual revenue per employee. They are those organizations that are running incredibly high profit margins, that are focused on ultimate client value, not sort of inputs and work to be done. They are the high flyers, and they are ones that just are just leading the charge. So it all has to do with that, not just having a process, but using it enough to get better at it.
But So take notes, people. No more excuses, right?
Yeah.
Because that's also the vicious circle of excuses, right? Oh, the data is crappy, so I'm not putting my stuff into the CRM anyways because no one uses it because the data is crappy. Yeah, no surprise, sir. Anyways, you were just saying, not all the CRMs do a decent job at being professional services friendly. But and you can name names on this podcast, I don't care. Do you have recommendations? Do you want to give them, or is like
Sure.
Yeah, what should they use?
Sure. Yeah, right. Let's get to it. What should they use? Well, and I'm gonna caveat that just a little bit, right? A lot of CRM systems depend on the existing technology systems that are in your organization, right? It is naive to think that you can take any CRM system and just drop it into your organization and have it integrate well with everything else you're doing. So that is a huge deal, because if we're talking about professional services, if we're talking about firms that don't necessarily have many or any full-time salespeople, who don't have a 24/7, kind of high-flying, dedicated sales practice, and they aren't in their CRM system all day long, they have to have something that integrates into their other systems, right?
Yeah.
So for organizations that are entwined very, very deeply with Microsoft, Dynamics is helpful. Dynamics generally needs a good bit of customization, and it's also very expensive. And one of the things about Dynamics and Salesforce and some of those more expensive CRM systems is that they need to be administered, meaning that you need to have a technical, internal and an external technical resources in order to administer those. So you have to have the resources, not just to pay your seats and all that stuff, but you have to have someone who could administer that. So that's a big deal. In the past, I have used Zoho, HubSpot's. HubSpot's kind of an interesting one. HubSpot's Genesis. They kind of, I don't know, maybe they sort of invented this whole sort of inbound sort of concept of marketing, right? It's like we're going to be a content engine, and people that's going to generate leads, inbound leads, right? They really grabbed that. So they created a tool to be able to create content, push it out, receive those leads, and their CRM system works okay, but you can clearly see if you spend any time with HubSpot, their CRM system is sort of duct taped on the side of their marketing engine, right? Which is fine.
I was going to say I find it can cover quite a lot of not super sophisticated use case. Let's put it that way, right?
Which actually
shops,
is okay, right?
Yeah,
it's okay. I think we get into trouble if things get more sophisticated. I've used Insightly. I haven't used it for some time. I currently use Nimble, and I use Nimble because it has a couple really killer functions. And first of all, it's not very expensive, so it's affordable for most smaller organizations, and it has a keep in touch functionality. And I'm going to define that. A keep in touch functionality, and even the high flyers don't have this. Salesforce, Dynamics, they do not have it. A keep in touch functionality is if you have 500 contacts in your CRM system, you can tag 50 of those individuals in there as these are people that are important to me and I want to keep in touch with them. You then take those individuals and assign a particular contact cadence with all of those individuals. I need to stay in touch with this person every 90 days, this person 180 days, this person's fine. I can every year is sufficient for me to just sort of make sure I'm connected to them. And then it constantly provides these reminders to you. It's like, hey, you're 3 months overdue and staying in touch with so-and-so. Hey, you're 3 weeks past the time where you wanted to stay in touch with Bob. And it does this in they are these nice little persistent reminders. They're not date-based. You can put a reminder on your calendar on, June 15th to contact so-and-so. But I'll tell you what, if June 15th comes and goes and that reminder isn't persistent, you forget. So it has a very specific functionality where it says it's a persistent reminder that says you still have not contacted Bob.
It's like an overdue thing.
Right. It's a little overdue thing. It's a little overdue thing.
Yeah.
And very few systems have this in place, but it's super helpful for kind of the fundamental reason. And Ash, I think Flo, I think we've talked about this. Ash is like, we didn't talk about it. Flo, we've talked about this. Is like the fundamental function of CRM systems is customer relationships. That's it, right? We've lost track of it. We just like CRM is just like this tool. It's like, no, customer relationships. And this keep in touch functionality is killer because it enables you to actually maintain those customer relationships. A lot of times I'll be working with my clients and I'll say, hey, you've got a good list of contacts here. You should go reach out to so-and-so. It's like, oh, it would feel awkward because I haven't been in touch with them for 3 years.
That's so true. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why? If they're an important contact, why have you not been in touch with them for 3 years? It's like, oh, I was busy. I was doing stuff. I can't believe it's been 3 years. It's like, well, you need some help.
And to Ash, to your earlier point, I mean, if you were to have some discipline around that stuff, and I personally try to, but I'm not great at it. That aside, if you were to do that more regularly, the data quality issues you might still have, they probably become less and less. I mean, there's other technologies nowadays, enrichment tools. You can look at LinkedIn, blah, blah, to keep track of people. But one of the issues some of my clients still have is they have these email addresses, and then you send something out, and half of them come back because it turns out that person has left. Like the business email address and stuff is no longer valid, right? They changed job 2 times in those 3 years you just mentioned where there was no contact. So both the relationship gets stronger and the data quality should trend upwards over time, which that I also like that idea, right?
Yeah, there's and I'll add this note when we're talking about CRM systems, and there's a bunch of other names that I've tried a ton. I've tested for either probably months sort of thing, Pipedrive and Prosperworks, and some of these may have been acquired ever since they all kind of change names, and they're going Keep, Close, Sugar, Pipeline Deals. There's a whole bunch of them out there, and there's so many. But what's fundamentally important, there's 2 things I'll say. This fundamentally important is that you need to have business processes in place, because CRM is a business process first and a technology software tool second. I would love for firms to have created business processes, things they're doing, a series of activities, information they're gathering, data, that they have this process in place and they're doing these activities, and all of the people who are involved in sales are pulling their hair out saying, we need a tool. We desperately need a tool to help us organize these efforts and to organize our opportunities. And we're freaking out and we need a tool. And you say, oh, great, there's CRM. And they say, oh, and it's wonderful and it works great. So now they have a business process that drives a tool adoption. But it's what happens. The other thing happens is somebody who has a wild hair goes out and buys a tool and drops a license on top of everybody in the firm and says, here, go use it. And there's no urgency. They don't have a business process. They don't have a practice of, outbound outreach, staying in touch, running opportunities through a rigorous pipeline.
Yeah, and to your earlier point, definitions, right? I mean, I'm on HubSpot. I can say this. So you open up HubSpot for the first time, there is deal stages in there.
Yeah,
they're just there. So, but the tool doesn't tell you, or maybe it doesn't. I haven't read the documentation. Thinking about it, that could be true. But you should have, even if there is documentation about it, you should have your own definitions and be very clear about it, right? I think that was the first point you made. And I come across this as a layperson who works around CRMs, but I come across that part so often. Either there is no definitions, or sort of going back to the entire point of this discussion, there is, but and I've worked in marketing agencies where this was the case. People had beautifully designed, sophisticated sales processes, even with, like, to your earlier point, with helpers for the different stages, and it was rotting in some PowerPoint somewhere in SharePoint, and no one who was running the business used it. And you could clearly tell in the winning streaks of the teams who were the few people who were doing it, for lack of a better word, by the book, because they had a win rate that was like twice as good as everybody else's. And if you worked in and were like, hey, the last pitch you did, how did you do it? And they sort of cooked up their own stuff and it wasn't working. Sorry, that was a short rant, but I think that's also very important, right? And besides that,
Flo, I just want to add, because I was involved in like purchasing enterprise software at a place. One of the things that you have to look into before you purchase is make sure that there is an education component, because if they don't have a team that teaches you, you're going to be in the same situation where you are. I mean, I understand when it's a single user license, but when it's like a large company, you better have that education element.
But to Mark's earlier point, I think where that breaks down and is that these guys are used to, I don't know, the software is used to sell subscriptions, right? And I don't, maybe to just give people one practical example, like all the stage buckets and stuff, you can use these to drive projection reports out of a CRM, right?
Oh yeah.
And if the CRM is built to sell a subscription license and there's a fixed price per seat plus minus maybe a discount, right? You get a reliable pipeline prediction out of there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Now, with a consulting deal, to your early example, Mark, where the overall opportunity maybe is $250,000, but in negotiation, which keep in mind, that's very late in the stages, right? We decide on just settle for the 50 out of those 250 first, right? Suddenly all the numbers, like there's nuances to these types of things, which you will probably not hear during the typical CRM onboarding process, because these people are not, or not, maybe not as well. Maybe some of them are, I should be fair here.
Yeah.
But I've sat through a few of them where it was clear that they have a playbook that's not, to Mark's point, tailored to the professional services world and the intricacies there.
Yeah. Good point. And I mentioned I was going to say a couple things with the and there might be a couple more. One of the important elements of adoption has to do with making the use of a CRM system a compulsory part of a sales process. Not that you're twisting someone's arm to use it, but you're creating an element, a step, a particular thing that is done in your business's sales process that needs to be driven by the tool. Whether it's, your qualifications are your qualification questions for that conversation are baked into your CRM system. So you have to turn to the CRM system and complete the form, with the qualification questions and getting their notes and responses and everything else, or, whatever else it is, that helps adoption. Not in an arm twisting way, but creating an element of your sales process that is baked into your CRM system that makes using the CRM system compulsory. That speeds adoption, because the reality is most professional services firms can close a deal without ever touching a CRM system.
Yeah.
They just don't have to use it. There's no compulsory part of it that makes their sales process less than someone else who is using the CRM system. So you have to figure out what that is and bake part of your sales process into it. The other note I wanted to say, and this deviates a little bit from CRM systems, is that there's this interesting genre of apps that's emerging called PRM, personal relationship management. And a lot of these, it's interesting, you're seeing it throughout the pandemic and other things like that, is that, and a lot of them are sort of personal, sort of relationship-based sort of stuff, just like friends losing track of friends. And one of them's a coder, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make an app that sits on my phone that's going to remind me that it's been 6 months since I've talked to my good friend Bill, right? So that whole genre of apps is starting to emerge right now. And one of the interesting things is for a business user, it's a little tricky because a lot of them just live on your phone and they aren't tied into sort of like systems and larger business systems. I think they will at some point. I think it's going to integrate and be really sweet. But one of the cool things about having a PRM, a personal relationship management system built on your phone, is that it records when you email them, when you call them, and when you text them. So it's so cool. You could say, oh my gosh, it's been, 3 months since I've talked to Bill. Here's my little reminder to talk to Bill. I sent Bill a text. Boom. There was my interaction. So it's an interesting thing. And again, it's a lot of these are driven from the pandemic where people have lost touch of each other and they're starting to emerge. There's a few out there. There's one called Dex. There's Levitate. There's Nat App. There's Monica, I think, is actually kind of an open source solution. There's a hand, and if you search, you can find them. So they're really compelling, and they start to bridge this CRM business thing and this PRM personal thing. And they're interesting tools, and they're worth, if you have, if there are individuals in your audience that say, look, I'm just having a really hard time keeping track of important people in my life, business or otherwise, these are really compelling tools.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that was 60 minutes almost worth of lots of great insight. And I could go on, but I think we gotta wrap this here.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mark. That was great overview over how you get from thinking about a business process that's essentially made up of conversations, right, and relationships, into at the end sort of tooling that, right, using software. I think that will be quite helpful for people. And I also think that that's not everything to know about sales process and CRM, but that would be maybe a good start, right? 80-20 rule that should get you quite a long way. Yeah. So I'll say thank you for that. Brilliant stuff. The last question we then always have at this point in time is where should we send people to if they want to hear or read more from you or sort of build upon what we've just heard and really get into the weeds of all these things?
Right. I hopefully have an informative website at wainwrightinsight.com. I am a frequent flyer, I guess, on LinkedIn. So I use that channel. That's an important channel for me and hopefully my audience. So either of those are great channels to get in touch with me. I've recorded a number of podcasts, including your great show. I appreciate all of you, the work you guys are doing. I appreciate you inviting me to join you. This has been a great conversation. So I'm happy to chat with any and all. And this has been a great conversation.
Nice.
So thank you for joining us, Mark. And Flo, any last words?
No, I'm gonna stop the recording here, and I say have a nice Friday and then weekend eventually. Or for the people who download this on Monday, which according to my stats is quite a chunk of you, have a nice start into the week. I don't know. There we go.
Thanks for listening to Unbillable Hours. If you want more, tune in next week. You know where to find us.